Elysium was more than just a colony. It was a dream made real. A world of golden fields, blue oceans, and endless skies. The settlers called it Heaven's Second Chance. For 100 years, humans built homes, schools, and cities there. Children played under twin suns. Lovers walked through crystal gardens in the capital city of Leora. Farmers tilled the red soil, believing they had finally found peace among the stars. Captain Aaron Vale was one of those dreamers. He had retired from Earth's Navy to live on Elysium with his wife Mira and their young daughter Lena. Life was calm, simple, and full of laughter. Every evening, Aaron sat on the porch watching his daughter chase fireflies across the glowing meadows. He thought the wars were behind them, that the galaxy had finally accepted humanity's place among the stars. But peace is fragile, and sometimes it dies without warning. It began on a quiet morning. The sky shimmered strangely, as if a storm was forming high above the clouds. Then the alarms started to scream. Ships appeared in orbit, not human ships, but enormous vessels marked with the symbol of the Galactic Union. No message came. No warning, just silence. Then came the fire. From the black of space, bright lances of plasma rained down. The first beams struck the capital. Towers melted like wax. Streets turned into rivers of flame. People screamed as the sky itself burned. Aaron ran outside, shielding his daughter in his arms as explosions shook the ground. Mira grabbed emergency packs, her face pale with fear. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of ash. The colony tried to fight back. Local defense ships launched into the sky, but they were torn apart within seconds. The Galactic Union ships were ancient, powerful, and cold. They called humanity's colony a violation of expansion law. To them, Elysium was an infestation, a trespass to be cleansed. Aaron's communicator buzzed with orders from the emergency command. Evacuate civilians. Get to the northern hangar. He pushed through the crowds, clutching Lena's small hand. The roads were filled with terrified families. Fire fell from the heavens again, turning entire districts into glowing ruins. "Daddy, why are they hurting us?" Lena asked through tears. Aaron could not answer. His throat was tight. All he could do was hold her close and keep running. When they reached the spaceport, chaos reigned. Ships overloaded with refugees struggled to lift off. Soldiers shouted directions, trying to hold order as the bombardment continued. Mira was among those helping people board the last shuttle. Aaron turned to secure the hatch when another plasma beam struck nearby. The shockwave threw him backward. When he looked up, the shuttle, the platform, Mira, everything was gone. Only fire remained. He screamed her name until his voice broke. A young officer pulled him to his feet, dragging him toward a damaged freighter. "Captain, we have to go. The fleet is gone, there's nothing left." Aaron didn't want to leave, but Lena's terrified face forced him to move. They boarded the freighter just as the city behind them vanished in a white explosion. From orbit, the view was worse. Elysium's surface glowed like a dying ember. The twin suns reflected off oceans now boiling with heat. Every signal, every heartbeat from the planet faded into static. The Galactic Union fleet didn't even pause to confirm destruction. They simply turned and left, their mission complete. Aaron stood on the bridge, silent, broken. His daughter clung to his arm, sobbing softly. Around them, the survivors watched their world burn, the home they had built with love and hope erased in a single day. Some cursed the aliens, others prayed. But most just stared, hollow-eyed as Elysium turned to ash. Hours later, their damaged ship jumped into hyperspace, heading for Earth. The journey was long and heavy. No one spoke much. In the quiet hum of the engines, Aaron replayed Mira's last smile in his mind again and again, until it felt like a knife twisting in his chest. When they finally reached Earth, the news spread across every city, every colony, every home. Screens lit up with images of the destroyed world. Billions watched in silence. No one cheered. No one called for revenge yet. The whole of humanity just stood still, grieving, broken, stunned. But deep in that silence, something began to change. Grief slowly turned into fury. Sorrow became determination. And within Captain Aaron Vale's heart, the fire that destroyed his world began to burn again. This time not to consume, but to avenge. Humanity had lost a colony. But the galaxy was about to learn. Humanity never stays weak for long. The news of Elysium's destruction spread like wildfire across human space. From the mining colonies of Mars to the floating cities of Europa, from the shipyards of Titan to the far colonies beyond Alpha Centauri, everyone saw the same image. Elysium, once green and full of life, now burned like a dead star. People gathered around screens in silence. No one could speak. Children asked why the sky was red on the news, and parents could not answer. Across the solar system, the sound of mourning filled the air. Some cried, others screamed in anger, and many simply stared, unable to believe what they were seeing. The Terran Union government declared 7 days of silence. No entertainment broadcasts. No advertisements. No politics. Only the names of the dead were read, one after another, from dawn to dusk. The list never seemed to end. Captain Aaron Vale, now among the few survivors, stood before the High Council on the 7th day. His face was pale, his uniform torn and burned, his eyes hollow. The chamber was vast, floating high above Earth's atmosphere, a ring of glass and metal where the most powerful leaders of humanity met. In front of him sat admirals, presidents, and scientists. Around them hovered thousands of holoscreens showing Elysium's final moments. No one spoke for a long time. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Finally, the Earth Chancellor stood. "Captain Vale," she said softly, "you were there. Tell us what happened." Aaron took a deep breath. His voice trembled, not with fear but with grief and fury. "They came without warning," he said. "No message, no demand. They just called our home a violation and burned it. They killed my wife, my people, and left as if we were nothing." His fist clenched. "They didn't destroy a military base. They burned families, children, farmers, artists. They didn't fight soldiers, and they erased lives." An old admiral spoke next, his voice shaking. "We cannot win a war against the Galactic Union. They outnumber us. Their fleets are ancient and vast. If we strike, they will crush us all." Aaron looked at him with eyes full of pain and steel. "Then let them come," he said coldly. "Let them try. But this time we won't die begging. We'll die fighting." The room fell silent again. Everyone could feel something rising inside them. Anger, sorrow, pride, a storm that had been waiting for centuries to be born. A scientist at the table whispered, "Do you know what you're asking for, Captain?" "A war that could burn every world we have." Aaron stepped forward. "They already started the war. We just didn't see it. Every time they looked down on us, every time they called us primitive, every time they took what was ours, they were already at war." Elysium was only the first strike. The council members looked at one another. Some nodded slowly. Others looked away, afraid. But they all knew the truth. There could be no peace with those who saw humanity as insects. Then, Aaron reached into his uniform and pulled out something black and burnt. A small cloth patch with the emblem of Elysium on it. The flag was half destroyed, its colors faded by heat and ash. He walked to the center of the table and laid it down. "This was the flag of my world," he said quietly. "It flew over schools, homes, and gardens. My daughter used to draw it on her notebooks. This is all that's left. Tell me, counselors, how many more of these do you want to collect before we fight back?" The hall was silent again, but it was no longer a silence of fear. It was the silence that comes before thunder, heavy, alive, and full of power. The Earth Chancellor closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with a new fire burning behind them. "We have always wanted peace," she said. "But peace means nothing when it is built on our knees. If the galaxy wants to see our strength, then they shall see it." All around the chamber, voices began to rise. Admirals stood. Commanders saluted. Civilians watching across the stars cheered through tears. The decision had been made. That night, the order of retribution was declared. Every factory, every shipyard, every scientist and engineer received one command: prepare for war. Humanity did not cry anymore. The tears had turned to steel. As the council adjourned, Aaron walked out to the balcony overlooking the Earth. The blue planet glowed peacefully below, unaware that history had just changed forever. He whispered to himself, "They called us insects. Let's show them what happens when insects learn to bite." The stars above seemed to shimmer, and as if the universe itself had heard his words. The silence of morning was over. Now came the silence of preparation, the calm before the greatest storm the galaxy had ever seen. The galaxy had never seen humanity move like this before. When the order came from the Council of Silence, it was like lightning striking across every human world. Factories roared to life. Shipyards that had been quiet for decades began to shake with energy. Asteroids were hollowed and transformed into floating foundries. Moons became colossal assembly lines, their surfaces glowing with molten metal. Every human planet, every orbital station, every colony poured its strength into a single purpose: to build the greatest fleet the stars had ever known. In the orbit of Mars, Captain Aaron Vale watched the first dreadnought leave the shipyards. It was bigger than a city, black as night, its hull lined with glowing red channels that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ship carried more weapons than some star systems had defenders, and yet it was only the first of many. Aaron felt a strange mixture of awe and sorrow. This was humanity's answer to the fire that had consumed Elysium, yet the fleet was not yet complete. It was a promise, a warning, and a hammer poised to strike. Across the outer colonies, children and civilians contributed in small ways, unaware of how history would remember them. Engineers worked tirelessly, some in zero gravity, some in molten foundries, while others sent coded messages, design improvements, and morale support across the galaxy. On one station, a child drew a picture of Elysium burning, placing tiny human figures on a glowing battlefield. The image was later etched onto the hull of a dreadnought, a silent tribute to the home they had lost. As dreadnoughts multiplied, the AI core networks hummed across the stars. These systems calculated every trajectory, every jump, every possible battle scenario. There would be no mistakes, no hesitation. Every ship would move as a single organism, a vast swarm of vengeance. Scientists explained that the fleet would be faster, smarter, and stronger than any enemy expected. Each dreadnought had shields powered by quantum cores, weapons that could vaporize entire continents, and the ability to jump between star systems instantly. But it was not just machines that were built. Humanity itself changed. Soldiers trained harder than ever. Engineers pushed themselves to the edge of exhaustion. And leaders studied alien tactics, not to copy them, but to surpass them. Every human knew the cost of failure. Every human remembered Elysium. Rage became discipline. Sorrow became determination. Every heartbeat carried the echo of the planet that had burned. Captain Aaron traveled from shipyard to shipyard, inspecting the dreadnoughts, speaking to the people who built them. He saw old men return to the assembly lines, hands shaking as they welded massive plates of armor. He saw women who had lost their families teach the younger generations to handle plasma rifles, to pilot ships, to calculate attack patterns. He saw children writing messages on missiles, for Elysium, for our mothers, for home. One evening, Aaron stood on the edge of a massive launch platform orbiting Titan. Below, molten metal flowed like rivers of fire. Thousands of engineers moved like ants across the surface, preparing ships for launch. Aaron's communicator buzzed with a message from the council. It read simply, "The galaxy laughs at us. They think we are emotional. Let them laugh. Let them see the fire we have forged." The laughter of the galaxy did not matter anymore. The fire had already begun in humanity's hearts. It burned hotter than the suns of Elysium, hotter than any weapon the Galactic Union could wield. And as the first wave of dreadnoughts lifted off, their engines glowing with deadly red light, the stars themselves seemed to quiver. Even the AI networks seemed almost alive. They monitored the growing fleet, its calculations predicting every possible threat, every possible strategy. And still, the humans themselves remained unpredictable. The Galactic Union had not built machines like this before. Machines powered not only by steel and energy, but by grief, by love, by fury, by hope. By the time the 5th month passed, the dreadnoughts numbered in the tens of thousands. Each was a city, a fortress, a promise. Each carried the memory of Elysium, the faces of the dead, and the determination of every human who had ever been told they were weak. The galaxy had assumed humanity would cower, would beg, would fade quietly. Instead, humanity had risen like a storm, unstoppable, vast, and inevitable. At the end of the 3rd month, Captain Aaron stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, the flagship of the growing fleet. He gazed at the horizon of the launch platform, where thousands of ships prepared for departure. His heart ached with sorrow, yet it burned with pride. Humanity was no longer a fragile species hiding in the stars. Humanity had become a force the galaxy could not ignore. He whispered to no one in particular, "We lost our world, but we will make them remember it. Every star will know our name. Every fleet will feel our wrath, and no one will ever call humans weak again." The Forge worlds had awakened, and with them, the storm was ready to rise. News of humanity's rising fleet spread across the stars like a whispered threat. The Galactic Union, a centuries-old coalition of alien empires, laughed. In the council halls of the Union, their diplomats shook their many limbs in amusement. "Earth builds again?" one said, clicking its mandibles in derision. "They are emotional creatures," another scoffed. "They burn one world and now they think they can fight the galaxy?" Pathetic. Even the admirals of the Union, veterans of countless wars, laughed with a kind of cold arrogance. "They have factories, they have ships, they have nothing we cannot destroy," said a commander with green scales glinting under the council lights. The humans rage, but rage is not strategy. Rage will die as it always does. Yet across human space the opposite was true. Every planet, every station, every orbiting city thrummed with life, purpose, and determination. On Titan's foundry moons, workers labored in shifts around the clock, building weapons of unimaginable power. On Mars, engineers designed plasma cannons that could melt entire starships. Children painted banners for the fleet, for Elysium, for our families, for humanity. Even the AI core networks, silent and calculating, seemed to pulse with anticipation, predicting every possible move the aliens might make, and preparing humanity to counter it. The Union's laughter traveled through space, carried on long-range communications, but the humans did not hear it. They were too busy building, too busy learning, too busy becoming a force the galaxy had never expected. Captain Aaron Vale knew the aliens were laughing. He had watched their transmission of mockery, their words dripping with contempt, yet he did not feel fear. He felt something far stronger. Resolve. "They think we are small," he said to his officers on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Wrath. "They think we will fall quietly. Let them laugh. Let them see what humans are capable of when we no longer have anything to lose." Oren's eyes scanned the fleet. Thousands of dreadnoughts waited in orbit, their hulls black as obsidian, their red pulse lines glowing like the hearts of dying stars. Every ship carried the memory of Elysium. Every engineer, every soldier, every civilian who had contributed to its creation had infused their work with grief and fury. The fleet was not just metal and plasma. It was humanity's spirit made manifest, and the galaxy did not yet understand that humans did not fight like others. Where alien species relied on superior numbers, advanced shields, and cunning strategy, humanity relied on unpredictability, boldness, and passion. They had been underestimated for centuries, called weak, primitive, emotional. That underestimation had become their weapon. Every dreadnought was built not just to destroy, but to inspire fear, because humans had learned to strike where enemies least expected, to adapt faster than any AI or fleet could calculate. Back on Earth, transmissions showed the first signs of alien concern. Probes sent toward human space vanished without a trace. Fleet sent to monitor construction reported impossible energy readings. Some alien commanders tried to warn their councils. They are building something vast, something we cannot comprehend. The council ignored them. They laughed harder. Exaggeration, they said. Humans have nowhere near the strength to challenge the Union. They rage, they cry, but they will fade quietly. But humanity had been preparing not just for a fight, but for an awakening. Engineers worked side by side with soldiers, with scientists, with AI coordinators. Every jump, every trajectory, every tactical plan was simulated thousands of times. Humans did not just build ships, they built a reckoning. As the months passed, the laughter of the galaxy grew hollow. Strange anomalies appeared. Union patrols disappeared. Communication relays went silent. Rumors spread. The humans are building something enormous. Still, many dismissed it, clinging to pride and arrogance. Aaron walked along the main deck of the Eternal Wrath, listening to the hum of engines and the chatter of his officers. Let them laugh, he said again, almost to himself. Let them think we are weak. They will remember Elysium. They will remember fire. And then they will remember humanity. In the black of space, the first wave of dreadnoughts began to align for deployment. Their engines flared softly, glowing red against the void. Each carried hundreds of human lives within, lives forged by grief, anger, and hope. And in that quiet light, Aaron understood something. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for too long. They had mocked humanity's colonies, called them weak, fragile, and unworthy. But humans had learned a terrible lesson. Pain could be transformed into power. Loss could be transformed into steel. Mockery could be transformed into a storm. The galaxy laughed. But humanity was ready to make the universe pay for that laughter. And when the dreadnoughts began their first maneuvers, cutting across the void like a silent, unstoppable tide, every human heart thumped in unison for Elysium, for home, for the galaxy. The storm was rising, and soon, no one in the stars would be laughing anymore. 2 years had passed since Elysium's fire, and humanity was no longer the species the galaxy had once mocked. From Earth to the outermost colonies, 500,000 dreadnoughts waited in silent, deadly formation. Their black hulls reflected distant stars, and their red pulse lines glowed like the heartbeats of gods. Each ship carried weapons capable of leveling worlds, shields that could withstand entire fleets, and the resolve of every human who had survived the Union's cruelty. Captain Aaron Vale stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, his face hardened by grief yet burning with determination. He looked at the fleet assembled before him, stretching across orbit like a river of steel. Thousands of years of history had led to this moment. Every human world, every colony, every civilian who had labored, sacrificed, and built the fleet had poured their hope and sorrow into the single act of defiance. Aaron's eyes drifted to the transmission screens showing the galaxy beyond. The Galactic Union would see the fleet soon. They would mock it first, then tremble. But that was not humanity's concern. Humanity's concern was Elysium, burned to ash, and the promise that the stars would never forget. Engage formation protocol, Aaron ordered, his voice calm but unwavering. Thousands of engines flared. Dreadnoughts adjusted their positions, forming wedges, lines, and spheres that no enemy had ever imagined. It was not just a fleet, it was a living organism, every ship acting in perfect harmony. For months, AI core networks had trained each ship, simulating every maneuver, every strike, every strategy. The fleet was ready, and humanity had waited. As the first jump drives activated, stars blurred into streams of light. The dreadnoughts surged across space faster than any Union patrol could anticipate. Their arrival was silent, swift, and terrifying. Entire star systems vanished from Union sensors, swallowed by the sudden, precise presence of humanity's wrath. In the bridge of the eternal wrath, Aaron watched the monitors, his hands resting lightly on the rail. He did not need to shout orders. The fleet moved as one, anticipating his commands before he spoke. Centuries of ridicule had taught humans one lesson: survive, adapt, and strike without hesitation. And now the galaxy would learn it too. On Earth, broadcasts showed children waving at the fleet's departure. Engineers, soldiers, and civilians cheered through tears. Old men saluted from orbiting stations, their hands trembling. Humanity was not leaving its home behind. It was carrying its memory, its pain, and its fury across the stars. Every dreadnought carried a message, etched into the hulls of their ships, written in human languages and symbols. For Elysium. For our families. For humanity. Even the aliens who witnessed it would understand. These were not just weapons. These were the spirits of humans made manifest, impossible to ignore or destroy. As the fleet approached the edge of Union-controlled space, sensors detected patrols, warning relays, and minor fleets. They expected a fight, but they were unprepared. Humans did not retreat. Humans did not hesitate. They advanced. Each dreadnought a hammer, each formation a crushing tide. Plasma cannons fired in synchronization, obliterating ships and installations in moments. Shields collapsed. Entire fleets vaporized. The galaxy had never experienced anything like this. Captain Aaron's face remained calm, though his heart burned with fire. He remembered Mira's smile, Lena's laughter, the twin sons of Elysium, all lost to a cruel and careless enemy. Every life destroyed, every home burned had become fuel for this march of steel. Humanity would not merely win, it would ensure the galaxy never forgot the cost of mocking them. By the time the first system fell, news of the fleet's power spread faster than any transmission. Union diplomats scrambled, trying to understand what had arrived at their borders. They had laughed at humanity, called them weak and emotional, and believed they could be crushed without thought. That laughter died quickly, replaced with fear, disbelief, and anger. But humanity did not celebrate. There were no songs, no parades, no exultation. Only purpose. Only movement. Only the endless, relentless march of dreadnoughts carrying grief turned into steel, sorrow turned into fire, and hope turned into vengeance. Aaron looked at the stars ahead. Each point of light was a possible battlefield, each system a memory waiting to be honored. And in his mind he whispered a vow. We lost our world. We lost our families. But we will make the stars remember. We will make every alien who mocks us pay. And humanity will rise stronger than ever. The fleet surged forward, engines blazing, forming a storm no galaxy had ever seen. For the first time, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The march of steel had begun, and no force in the galaxy would survive its fury unscathed. The first strike fell like lightning across the void. The Galactic Union had believed they could control humanity, had assumed the humans would weep quietly in the ashes of Elysium, had thought they could mock them and continue their expansion unchallenged. But the humans were no longer weak. The fleet, 500,000 dreadnoughts strong, approached the central hub of the Union, the system that served as the beating heart of their power. Captain Aaron Vale stood on the bridge of the eternal wrath, eyes cold and steady, watching the stars. Around him, the hum of 1,000 engines and the subtle glow of energy shields filled the vast space. Every crew member knew their purpose. Every human aboard knew what they carried: grief, loss, and an unbreakable determination. Target coordinates locked, said the navigator. Aaron nodded. Open fire on my mark. Precision but no mercy. The first salvo of plasma and kinetic weapons erupted. Entire fleets of the Union expecting a few human vessels were obliterated in moments. Shields collapsed. Starbases disintegrated into clouds of debris and fire. The humans advanced like a tide of steel, each dreadnought moving with terrifying precision. Every strike honoring Elysium and every other colony the Union had burned or neglected. Union commanders scrambled to respond. "Focus fire on the flagship," one shouted, his voice trembling. "Destroy the Eternal Wrath." But the Eternal Wrath did not falter. Its shields absorbed hits that would have shattered lesser ships. Its weapons struck with overwhelming power. In minutes, the central hub was reduced to rubble, its communication relays silenced, its orbital defenses erased. The humans had come not to negotiate. They had come to teach a lesson the galaxy would never forget. Aaron's eyes never left the battlefield. Memories of Elysium, Mira's smile, Lena's laughter, all haunted him, but they were no longer chains. They were fuel. Every death, every home lost, every fire that had burned their world had been transformed into relentless, unstoppable power. Human dreadnoughts did not retreat or pause. Where alien fleets relied on formation and retreat, humanity relied on courage, adaptability, and sheer will. If a strike failed, humans adapted. If the enemy hid behind numbers, humans struck unpredictably, finding weak points the AI had predicted, but the aliens could not comprehend. The battle spread across the system. Human dreadnoughts jumped between star clusters, striking installations before reinforcements could arrive. Entire alien fleets vanished as humans attacked from angles no one had anticipated. Union soldiers, who had once laughed at human weakness, now faced the cold reality of a species they had underestimated for centuries. Aaron watched as the last of the hub's orbital platforms crumbled. The Central Council's leaders attempted to escape through emergency jumps, but human interceptors awaited in every corridor, every hyperspace lane. Within hours, the entire system was silent, a graveyard of alien pride and power. On Earth and across human colonies, people cheered silently. They did not celebrate the death and destruction. They honored the precision, the courage, and the vengeance that humanity had carried across light years. The fleet's progress was broadcasted as a warning. Humanity did not fight for conquest but for remembrance. Every strike, every jump, every victory was a message to the galaxy. Do not underestimate humans. Do not mock them. Do not touch their worlds. Aaron allowed himself a moment of quiet. He stood alone on the bridge, looking at the ruins of the central hub, feeling the weight of every life lost, every world burned. "This is not revenge," he whispered. "This is a lesson." And the lesson was clear. The Union fleets that remained retreated, confused, and broken. Communications tried to rally allies, but the humans had already predicted those moves. They controlled every corridor, every approach, every strategic path. Humanity had turned grief into calculation, sorrow into strategy, and fire into powerful, unstoppable force. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The humans are coming. The humans cannot be stopped. Every star they touch is fire. But humanity did not pause. They moved forward, relentless, precise, and unstoppable. Captain Aaron knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy would remember Elysium, and it would remember the human fleet. On the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, he looked at his officers and crew. Every pair of eyes reflected the same thing: sorrow, resolve, and the calm before the next storm. We fight for Elysium. We fight for every world they have burned. We fight so the galaxy will never dare call us weak again. The stars ahead glimmered in silent warning. The human storm had begun, and nothing in the universe would survive it unscathed. The galaxy was silent. Not because peace had returned, but because fear had finally learned to respect humanity. The Union's fleets were shattered, their command systems destroyed, and their leaders either gone or trapped. The stars that had once been filled with arrogance now trembled at the approach of humans. Captain Aaron Vale stood on the bridge of the Eternal Wrath, looking out across the expanse of human dreadnoughts. 500,000 ships stretched beyond sight, each carrying grief, hope, and unbreakable resolve. The fleet had marched across the stars like a tidal wave, striking swiftly, destroying the arrogant, and leaving a message no one could ignore. It was over. Yet the victory felt hollow. Humanity had not sought conquest. They had sought remembrance. They had fought to show the galaxy the price of mocking a species they had underestimated for centuries. A transmission was prepared, not as a threat, but as a warning. Aaron watched the holographic projection of the message scroll across the command console. We are humanity. We do not seek to conquer. We do not seek to destroy without reason. But we will protect what is ours. Burn one human world, and you will face the fire of 500,000 suns. Remember Elysium and remember this lesson. Humans do not forgive. Humans do not forget. Humans endure, and when provoked, we rise. The message was sent across every remaining Union system, every distant colony, every alien fleet that remained in space. Silence followed the transmission. The galaxy had no words. Even the oldest empires who had mocked humanity for centuries could only stare in disbelief. Aaron turned from the screens and walked along the bridge, past officers who had fought alongside him, past soldiers who had seen worlds burned and rebuilt in memory, past engineers who had worked tirelessly to transform grief into steel. Every one of them carried the same weight: loss, pain, and a fire that refused to die. He walked to the viewing window, looking down at a rebuilt Elysium far below. The twin suns shone again on golden fields. Rivers reflected the light like liquid fire. Slowly, life returned. Children laughed in the towns that had been destroyed. Families planted gardens. Humanity healed, but the memory of loss remained, woven into the very fabric of their spirit. Aaron whispered softly, almost to himself, "We lost our world, but we will rise. Every star we touch will know that humans are not weak, that we are the storm, that we endure." Around him the fleet stood ready, not for vengeance this time, but for protection. Humanity had proven its strength, yet it did not celebrate recklessly. The humans had learned that power was not only in weapons but in resolve and unity, in the willingness to protect what they loved. As night fell on the surface of Elysium, the lights of the human cities shone bright against the darkness. Families reunited. Soldiers returned, and for the first time in centuries humans could breathe without fear, knowing that their place among the stars was respected, not because others allowed it, but because humanity had earned it through fire, steel, and unwavering spirit. Captain Aaron returned to the bridge of the Eternal Wrath. He looked out at the stars, a faint smile on his lips, and thought of Mira, of Lena, of every life lost and every world rebuilt. Humanity had endured. Humanity had risen. Humanity had reminded the galaxy of a truth that no empire could ignore. They were not weak, they were not fragile, and they would never bow. The transmission echoed once more in every corner of the galaxy. Remember Elysium. Remember humanity. We endure. And with that, Captain Aaron Vale turned to his officers and spoke quietly, yet with unshakable certainty. We rebuild. We protect. We rise. Humanity will never be broken again. The fleet powered down its weapons but remained in formation, a silent guardian across human space. The stars were calm, but they would never forget the storm that had swept through them. Humanity had burned with grief, forged that grief into steel, and risen stronger than any force the galaxy had ever known. In that moment, the galaxy understood something it had never known before. Humans were more than survivors. Humans were a force of nature, a storm made of fire and hope, and nothing would ever erase their mark from the stars. The silence that followed was no longer fear alone. It was awe. The galaxy would remember humanity, and humanity would endure forever.